What is the most fricked up thing you've seen your parents do? I think it was probably sitting in a chair with a wooden spoon when I was about 5, screaming at me to come to her so she could beat me with it. The kind of scream where they turn red in the face. Their expression is so distorted it barely looks human. Their throat gets so tight from the level of screaming they sound different. I just remember standing there in front of her crying and frozen. When I didn't go to her, she started hitting herself with the wooden spoon on her leg, screaming as she did it. When it snapped in half on her leg, she started hitting herself and pulling at her own hair. She had a wooden spoon-shaped bruise perfectly shaped out on her leg, and I remember a few days later when I saw it and said something, she said, "That's because of you. That's what you did." I'm pretty sure it was because I didn't want her to brush my hair. I can't really remember. My brother never experienced any of this. I always copped it when I was home alone with her. But out of everything she ever said to me, and still does, that was the most fricked thing I've seen her do. Ah man. Bless you. I hope you have a peaceful life now. My dad was a rager. My ex was a rager. My so is the sweetest, calmest man. You don't realize the pain of yelling until it's gone. Mum threatened to shoot herself over the new dog crapping on the carpet. She's a very all or nothing woman. Her sound for "I am struggling with the peanut butter jar" is the same as her sound for "someone is currently being murdered." Might have to do with the depression and anxiety that she passed on to me. My parents are the same, OMG. My stepfather groping my girlfriend's breasts. I complained, but my mother told me not to be so jealous. They might as well have given me a brochure of headstones, saying they've decided to both be dead to me. They might as well have given me a brochure of headstones, saying they've decided to both be dead to me. Yep, I would have to agree with you on that one. That's a serious case of wait, what? Oh frick no, I'm outta here. My stepdad threatened to kick me and my sister out of the house along with all do our stuff if my mom left on a business trip that would secure her job and make her self-dependent. I told her to leave because it was important that she go and do this for herself. He indeed kicked us out after I came back from the airport. He took the ski rack he helped buy off the car and moved all of the furniture, throwing anything in a public space or their room into the garage or my sister's room. I began secretly loading the car with essentials like our personal files and birth certificates. I also grabbed the PS4 he bought me to prevent him from abusing my account. My puppy was still on worms treatments, but he said he would take her back if we left her, so we had to put her in her crate where she had bad diarrhea. I took essential clothes and school stuff and tried to take my violin. However, he spotted me when I went to head downstairs and ran in front of me. I had paid for half of the $1,500 instrument, but he helped pay for the rest and claimed it was his. I tried to keep it from him, which became a wrestling match between my 5'4", 117 pound self and his 220 pound 6 featuring self. He eventually reached past me and grabbed the strap, ripping the handle I was holding off of the case. We left shortly after, seeking refuge at neighbors for 3 days. I had to hide my car in a parking lot a ways away so he wouldn't try to steal it. I did eventually get the violin back, but he destroyed our house and put a 3-inch radius hole in the stairway wall, and kicked and punched the bathroom door in my mom's room, destroying it and ripping it off the hinges. I have never been so terrified of a guardian before. She got divorced from him a month later. TLDR. My stepdad kicked me and my sis out of the house, taking a lot of our stuff, while my mom was out of town. At least her mom is away from him now, and BTW that is some weird stuff. My parents go in an argument, like I'm sure a lot of couples do, but it just kept escalating, voices raising. Eventually it ended up in screaming match. My mom took the phone off the hook and threw it at my dad. He caught it just before it hit his face and then he got right in my mom's face and screamed at her. She then started smacking him and screaming at him. At the time I thought that was how couples argued. Then I saw my wife's parents get in an argument. She said it was one of the worst she had ever seen, and they were barely 1/10th of the yelling my parents had gotten. Anyway, this has led to a lot of issues with my wife. She thinks I'm yelling at her when I'm, in my mind, barely raising my voice. She always thought I was crossing a line, while I thought I was holding back. Then about 6 months ago she saw my mom and I get in a fight. I'm not even sure what it was over. but I had to resort to yelling to get my point across and catching random crap she threw at me. After that my wife understood that when I get stern and don't yell, and don't throw crap, I'm holding back. I'm trying the hardest to not end up like my mom. My parents divorced when I was 7. My father died when I was in my early 20s. He left me $5 in his will. That was fine. I wanted nothing to do with him from the time I was 7. The courts revoked his visitation when I was 13. I saw him 3 times from a distance between 13 and 18 and didn't speak to him. We never got in contact again. My mom wanted me to get a lawyer, contest his will and turn over the money to her because she felt she was due on account of her crappy marriage and lousy divorce settlement. Her sisters agreed. Leaving a token amount means I didn't forget this person exists. I just don't want them to have anything so they can't contest the will saying they were accidentally left out or something. My dad has very bad road rage. When I was about 8 he got us into an accident on purpose just to get back at the person for getting into the turning lane in front of the neighborhood he was trying to get out of. My dad swerved in front of traffic and hit the guy from behind. I still hate being in the car with him. My mum cheated on my dad when I was 5 yo. I remember seeing the guy and mum saying don't tell dad. To save the marriage they moved states and my dad still kept his same job, $150k salary in the 90s, and came home in the weekends. Of course mum found someone else to cheat with while dad was at work. He got her all the new cars and started her a business. But still she was committed to cheating. They divorced. During the custody court case she lied in court say my dad violated me and my sister. Same mum, different dad. My dad was trying to get custody of my sister even though she wasn't his own. He knew she was better off with him. The case destroyed my dad, lost his job, house money etc. Mum remarried and had more kids with the new guy. Fast forward 10 years, and she cheats on him with his best friend. Told my sisters don't tell dad. She broke the news on my birthday which was the same day as my final exams. They go to court for custody. Can you guess what happens next? She said my stepdad violated her and my sisters. Utter balls. He can only visit with a police officer present. These are examples of what she has done to people in my life. I could write a book about the crap she has done to me personally. Well, when I was about 10 me and my aunt, 2 cousins and my mom went to this water park. My older cousin had gone off with her friend and me, my mom and my younger cousin went to go on a ride and my aunt was sitting by the wave pool. When me, my mom, and younger cousin got to the slide he got scared. He told my mom that he wanted to go back to his mom. My mom then started going ballistic on him and cussing at him and crap and that scared him even more so he ran off to his mom. Well my mom grabbed me and we went to find him. We found him with my aunt and without her saying anything my mom then started cussing her out and threatening her, saying that my cousin was a little p and she was gonna kill her because he ran away. That just scared him even more and he started crying. We got kicked out the park, and the whole 45-minute ride home she was just talking more crap. After that my mom cut my aunt off. It's been 9 years and they still haven't talked. Your mom's a C. When I was in 3rd maybe 4th grade, I was crying in my room on the bed because my mom wouldn't let me go to a neighbor's house. She then proceeded to take a pillow from my bed and hold it over my face, attempting to suffocate me. Luckily, I was smart enough to hold my arms over my face to keep her from doing it. I still hate her for that till this day and I'm 16. She wonders why I don't love her the way I do my dad. What the actual frick? I have really low blood pressure and high anxiety stress. This was also when I was struggling with an eating disorder and hardly ate anything. I got into an argument with my mother about something incredibly stupid. Probably about how I left a crumb on the counter when I wiped it down or something, and started telling my mother I felt faint and was struggling to stand. My mom screamed at me to leave her room and get ready for school. I left her room and promptly fainted, hitting my head on the corner of a wall and knocking myself out cold. When I woke up minutes later I couldn't move my legs or my arms and began screaming for my mom to help me, sobbing loudly and begging for her to help. My mom opened the door, looked down at my crying, begging body unable to move on the floor, and said "You're always so freaking dramatic," before slamming the door in my face. I had a severe concussion. That's awful. I'm sorry you had to go through that. My mother loved to use dramatic. especially when it came to genuine health or mental concerns. I hope you're doing okay now, X. My father strapped fireworks to me at a family barbecue and recorded me as I ran around, frantically screaming whilst trying to remove them as my entire extended family cheered and hooted with laughter. My mom and dad have been divorced since I was 1, and despite the fact that I spent approximately an equal amount of time with each of them through my childhood, my mother's house was my legal residence, so I went to school in the town she lived in. During my 8th grade year, I began living with my dad full-time due to years of abuse and neglect by my mom. That following summer my mother moved without telling anyone, leaving me and my dad to either move to the town where my mom lived, which had a great school system and all my friends, or stay where we lived, in the most drug-infested town in the county with a considerably worse school system. My dad and I had to find a place and move in less than 2 months. My father held my mother down and screamed in her face because she didn't pay a bill, threw her backwards into a glass door because he thought she was cheating, shoved me through drywall because I clenched my fist while I was being yelled at, swung at me for trying to leave during an argument, kicked me out repeatedly throughout my entire childhood. My mom stays with him, still. She acts as if he is the perfect human being. Maybe he has changed, but I still don't trust him. Not my story but my husband's. At 6 years old he had a loving relationship with his dog Star. The stories he's told me about her really light up his eyes. He loved her so much, but Star was getting old and he could tell. There had been some talks of taking her to the vet to be euthanized, but nothing ever came of it. One day he heard a scuffle in the shed and peeked his head around the corner of the door only to see his mother hanging his dog from a beam. This is always the story that kills the lights in his eyes when he talks about her. I'm big into rescuing and fostering dogs, so this story really tears me up every dang time. Of all the fricked up ways to kill a dog, you would think that somebody with a barn would have a gun to put it out of its misery right away, but hanging the poor thing, I can just picture it. My condolences to your husband. Watched my stepfather hold a gun to my mother's head telling her he'd kill her while he had her pinned on the floor. It's not a great experience calling 911 at 13 years old. They decided to frick kinky in a small hotel room while me and my baby brother were in the same room. That is messed up, holy crap. Saw my dad kill a dog with a hose because he was always fighting with the other dog. Saw him drown a cat in a 5-gallon bucket, not sure why. And saw him possibly beat a person to death. I was young, around 8, and he stopped at a bar and fought a guy right out front with me sitting in the car. He got the guy on the ground and just kept pounding his face until he wasn't moving. Got back in the car with blood all over him and his hands all messed up. We went to my grandparents' house right after, then stayed at one of his friend's house for about a week, then moved far away from that state. He told me later in life that it was a random guy that just tried to jump him and he just defended himself. He also very seriously told me that I can never go back to that state. Your dad is a sociopath. My mom, who is a nurse, had to do an interview with some businessman. For some reason, she had to record the whole thing in secret. She used a ballpoint pen that was actually a voice recorder. I never found out why she recorded that interview. To this day, I wonder if my mom is actually a nurse or not. That's actually interesting, to be honest. Asked me if I was hitting on him when he was high on M. Because if you are, that's okay. What the frick? I will crap on his grave and that is the next time he will see me. It's been almost 2 years and I still get sick thinking of that. Mom told me at 15 when we reconnected after 12 years that this local guy was hot but such a sleazebag that her pee couldn't get wet enough to let him in. I don't talk to her either. My dad duct taping my foster brother to a chair because he wet the bed. Jesse, if you are out there, I am so sorry I couldn't save you from him. I'm so happy you got away from my hideous family. My sister received a cancer diagnosis before she even turned 1 year old. My mom eventually refused to take her to the hospital for treatments because she was tired of missing episodes of Roseanne and that thing is going to die anyway. She made a show of grieving at the child's funeral a few months later, but the next day, back to being an butthole as usual. I was 13. My dad forced me to look at incriminating photos of my mom who was sleeping with another dude. He hired private investigators to obtain them when I was 17. Can't say which parent is more freaked up, but the situation felt awful at the time. I have way too many dark ones, so I am going to go with something kind of funny. So my mom spent about a month in a mental health ward when I was a kid. When she got out, our neighbors took us to an event where a local winery had jazz concerts on their wine. My mother, not thinking about all the drugs she was on to unfuck her brain, did 4 wine tasting flights and got smashed. She then proceeded to take off her top, spin it over her head, and shake her massive memories while hooting the mating call of the drunken redneck. Woo woo. When someone tried covering, she did a bob and weave and tried to make a run for it. I got to stand outside of the police station while her husband pissed at her bail. Fun times. Guy I used to go to school with tried to molest my sister when she was a kid. Failed attempt, runs home and my sister came back home and told our parents. My dad along with me and some other boys in the neighborhood go and find this kid at home. My dad tells his dad the situation and his dad, who was visibly frustrated with dude and his antics, tells my dad to do what he has to. My dad grabbed this kid, drags him to our backyard, ties him to a pole and whips him on the back with an iron cord. Dude yelled in anguish as my dad relentlessly tore his back up. One of those memories I'll never forget. My dad was responsible to pay the cemetery fees for my grandparents' plots, urban Latin America. He let the lease expire and they tossed their remains in the trash. That seems like a really stupid system. They got into a big fight. At some point, my father grabbed my mother by the throat and pushed her against the fridge. Luckily, nothing happened. He let go and grabbed his stuff, claiming he'd never come back, only to come back a few hours later. They're okay now, but that was scary as heck. Seeing my father, who's normally as cuddly and sweet as a giant teddy bear, turn into a violent monster was terrifying. My parents once began arguing over a casual freaking website, most likely similar to Tinder but for married couples. My dad began raging, threw and broke glasses, and hit and violated my mom against the Christmas tree. The most traumatizing part was when he stormed to his closet, got his gun from the gun safe, and put it to his head and cocked it. I was in my room crying my eyes out, but I still remember how terrified I was when I heard the gun, just waiting to hear the shot ring out. If my mom hadn't knocked it out of his hand, I honestly believe he would have shot himself. This was probably around 5-6 years ago, but it's one of the many reasons why I honestly hate my father. One of my older twin brothers is autistic but usually could do movies very well. I think it was Toy Story 2 and he started to get overstimulated, so my mom got up to walk him out. A group of teenagers in the back screamed at him that he was a retard and tripped him as they were walking by. My mom absolutely slapped the crap out of one of them, who then grabbed my mom's shirt or something. My dad was there in like on second and actually picked the kid up out of his seat and over the next row. One of his friends tried to hit my dad, so my other twin brother did this hop over the seat thing and into the melee. I was like 6 or 7 years old, completely convinced that my entire family was going to jail and I would be forgotten in the movie theater. I don't think anything ever came of it, and I honestly don't remember if the cops were called or if management got involved, but a few minutes later my other brother just told me we were leaving and we got Baskin Robbins on the way home. Good for your mom and dad, frick those kids. I was taken away from my parents for fighting back when I was 15. There were no previous reports of abuse, so I was charged with misdemeanor assault and ended up in foster care, then a halfway house. Before foster care and after jail, they sent me to rehab as punishment for claiming self-defense, spending my meager college fund on the venture. They told me that they'd take me out as soon as I recanted, and somehow gotten my sister to try to convince me to go along with it. I was there 4 or 5 months, until the money ran out. As a condition to graduate from the halfway house, I had to complete my probation. As a condition to complete my probation, I had to graduate from the halfway house. I was screwed. A few months before HS graduation, I'd made plans to move out with a friend and attend a local community college, leading to an arrest for a probation violation. I went before a judge who'd received a 4-page letter from my mom basically saying I deserved the harshest sentence under the law, and a page-long letter from me explaining the catch-22, my compliance with all other requirements, and my enrollment. It turns out that it was the same judge who took my sister away, and my mom was almost charged with contempt for screaming at the judge when I was released from my probation. On my way back to the halfway house, my mom nearly drove the director of the halfway house and I off the road, screaming at us and flipping us off. But when I got back, I finished packing my things and moved into my friend's place. Not even 2 hours had passed when my mom showed up on my friend's mother's lawn, across the street from the elementary school she taught at. My mom was there for over an hour screaming at this woman, telling her that she was harboring a fugitive, and that I was going to violate her daughters and murder her sons. About a week later, I saw the letters my friend's mom brought home that had been sent to everyone at the school about the dangerous fugitive she was harboring. The lady nearly lost her job and had a major breakdown. She also somehow still had the authority to pull me out of school, which she did out of spite. All of my teachers had been harassed by her at one point or another and banded together to help me graduate early. I've got an unrequited friend request sitting in my Facebook from my mom, and a few years ago she showed up and tried to bribe my love with a meal and a fleece jacket. I ordered something expensive and lost the jacket. Bonus: when my parents moved to NC, their friends threw them a going away party. They all pitched in and made this sweet scrapbook with all their shared memories. We all gathered to watch my mom unwrap the presents. When she opened that one, she glanced over it, said how cheap, and tossed it aside. I'm just happy you won the legal battle. Good guy, judge. When I was 15, I started freaking. Dad found my boyfriend's condoms in my room and in rage shaved all my hair off. I had waist length hair and he forced me into a chair and pulled all my hair into this tight painful pony at the top of my head and just chopped it off. I cried for weeks. That is really horrible. I had to experience that kind of humiliation. Like freaking was the worst thing I could ever do. I deleted the rest of my comment. It's embarrassing. I've literally only talked about it a handful of times. Dad beating up my mom was pretty fricked up. I was like 2 or 3. Brother wasn't born yet and I'm 3.5 years older, and vividly remember it. This was back when police involvement and domestic violence typically meant separating the two for a night with SOP. My mother broke a beer bottle over the living room table and slashed her wrist with it because we confronted her about doing coke. Again, she put several rocks through the windshield of her car, tried to jump out a 5th story window, only to find window crazy, barged through the door at 3 AM with 2 of her H-addict friends barely able to walk because they tried to jump someone who had a bat, went from sitting on the couch to leaping over the living room table and putting a fist into the TV in one motion, crashed a car she got 2 days prior and to celebrate walked into the nearest bar, countless evictions for noise complaints, but my personal favorite, bit a cop while being dragged out of the house only to immediately scream police brutality when she was met with a knee to the forehead. Dad seems like a chill person. What the frick? If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.